Hello everyone out there on YouTube. Today we are taking a look at the Convert 2, which is Sierra Design's 4-season, 3-season convertible tent. I own it, I love it, and I'm going to take a look at the pros and cons, show off some of the features, and tell you why I think it's pretty much the most awesome 4-season tent you could get. Hey everyone, my name is David Wallman, and to give you a little bit of backstory behind how I came to the conclusion of this tent specifically, I want to tell you a little bit about my research. First of all, I don't believe in a one-size-fits-all. I think different people have different needs, different features that they want, different main activities that they do, and so don't just assume that this tent's going to be perfect for you. I do think it is an amazing tent though, and deserves more credit for what it is. I personally am a backpacker. That's my main activity that I do, so I was looking for something that was still going to be light and comfortable. I'm not going to Everest with this tent, and I'm not doing a lot of car camping with this tent. So I wanted something that was light. Now, if you've done any research on 4-season tents, you'll find that they pretty much, almost always, aside from a few cases, are a lot heavier than 3-season tents because they're meant to be heavy, durable, withstand the weight of snowstorms and heavy winds. There are some 4-season tents that are very light. For example, I believe it's the Mountain Hardwear Direct, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I'll put a little blurb here. It's super light, but it's a one-wall tent, and so people talk a lot about it being super stuffy and condensation, not very good ventilation. But it's really light, but it's meant for just, rapid mountain ascents. There was either super heavy bomb shelters, or there was super light, uncomfortable shelters. And then I found, and after doing a lot of research, found the Convert, which was pretty much, for me at least, the happy medium between weight and comfort. So Sierra Designs is a great company. They've been around for a long time. I know my dad used to rave about them. I think they got outplayed in marketing by a lot of newer companies, bigger companies. So you don't hear as much about them, but I think they're one of the most innovative companies out there right now. They just think outside the box in a lot of ways. And the Convert 2 is an example of that. But they call it Convert because it can also be used as a 3-season tent. So you don't have that ventilation problem, and typically if you used a 4-season tent in the summer, you would just die and come out looking like baked chicken. But in this instance, you can actually unzip the vestibule, and it has great ventilation. And so I've used it in the summer, and it works great, and I've used it in the snow, and it works great. This is the tent. Ta-da! First of all, I like the overall package size of it. They make the bag not so small that it's hard to get in, which is very common with tents, that you can never get them back in again. But they make this one, I would say, pretty much the perfect size. Now, I'm not quite sure if I'm a fan of the fact that the poles don't go inside with the tent. At the same time, I never carry them like that. I never carry them together. I always separate them anyway, so I don't know why it matters to me. But for some reason, this looks weird and clunky to me to have them separate. But this little bag is the poles. The stakes are on one side with a little Velcro to keep them from falling out. And then all the poles are in here. The poles are very colorful. And also, it's really easy to set up, but we'll get to that. But this is what it looks like in the bag. Very fancy, says the name on the end of it. So let's take a look now at setting it up. So now the tent is set up, let's talk about a few things that I really like about the setup in particular. First of all, it's really easy to do even for one person. As you were watching me, I was probably about 5 to 7 minutes real time. Pretty much you're gonna lay it out, stake it, and then put the poles on top, and then put the poles in the holes, poles in the holes, say that 10 times fast, and then you're going to pop it up and attach everything. Now the forward and the back pole are attached and are a singular pole along with the one that runs lengthwise. So you really only have 2 poles in your bag, 3 if you count the little one for the vestibule, but it's only a 2-piece. Either way, really simple pole setup. You don't have to worry too much because of that. You don't have to say like, oh, which pole was this? I've got 5 poles here. As to the ease of setup, the attachment points are really easy. So some tents have the little fabric loops that you have to feed the poles through, and that's really annoying and not really ideal for 4-season tents when you're in a storm and it's flapping around or something in the wind, and so clips are becoming more and more popular. This one has clips. Number 2 thing I like about the setup is that the rain fly is constantly attached. Not all tents, but a lot of tents the fly is separate from the body, and so you set up the tent and then you put the fly on top. Now if you do this, the problem is if you're setting up in a rainstorm or something, your tent is getting wet until you have the fly on top. The beauty of this is as soon as I roll it out, it's waterproof. So as I pop everything up and attach it, the fly is already on. Now that's also part of why the ventilation is so good, is because there's actually this layer in between the main tent body and the fly that allows this massive flow of air in between the entire body of the tent. As to the inside of the tent, there's your main door right here in the front, and it does have a a mesh window that can be unzipped and opened, just like there's a small window at the back. Other than that, there is no other mesh in this tent. As far as some features inside the tent, there are 2 small pockets up by where your head would be. They're not super big, but they do have enough space for a pocket knife, headlamp, things of that nature, and you have 1 on each side of the tent. Another feature is they do have little loops or guy points hanging from the ceiling. Now this is something that I wish they had done a little bit differently. At this point, the hooks are directly down the middle of the tent, and I wish that they had offset a little bit. So you had a hook over here and a hook over here running down the sides. This would allow you to do more like a cargo net kind of approach. But in this instance, you pretty much only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hooks, but they're only running down the middle. So it's good for hanging a headlamp, a central headlamp basically, or a lighting source. And what also we used it for in Iceland when our clothes were super wet is we tied a string from the front all the way to the back and we hung our wet clothes over it as a dry hanger. But again, it wasn't really optimal. I wish they had it on both sides. So a really small feature that can make such a big difference is zippers, and I've been really pleased with the zippers on this tent. They're smooth, they don't get caught really much on the vestibule at all. The front door especially is super easy to open and close one-handed. The vestibule is pretty much easy to open one-handed. I will say that at the bottom of the door where all the tension is when it's fully staked out, it's pretty hard to open, but I've also encountered that on pretty much every tent that I've owned and been in, so I don't think that's an abnormality. I think that's just the way that tents are. As you stake it out, it's going to be taut. I've had it in a bunch of different rainstorms throughout Europe, and I've had it in the snow here, and had no issues with water to complain about. It does have a bathtub styled flooring, so it comes up about 2 to 3 inches on the sides. That's pretty common style for 4-season tents. Also, I've had no issues with any other part of the tent leaking at all, and also the ventilation has been really good. So even when it's really wet outside, the condensation doesn't tend to seep through. Again, I think has to do with so much of the great ventilation that happens on this tent. I am very pleased with the vestibule as well. It's a nice large vestibule. It's a nice easy vestibule for cooking in as well as storing stuff. You could effectively store the gear of 3 people. When Tyler and I did the Tour de Mont Blanc through Europe, we had all our stuff in here, and we kind of it was enough for us to also make messes. But we had wet shoes and cooking gear and everything just kind of tossed here in the morning, and we could still get in and out in the middle of the night. You kind of tuck it back in the side, and you still have a clear path to get out. So very easy. I also like on the vestibule, something I didn't mention, is that there are 3 different zippers. So you can unzip it like I have now, or you can also just open up a section of the zipper as like a small window to see out of or something without having to open the whole door. I'm really not going to go into a lot of facts and statistics on this tent as far as its sizing and weight and price and whatnot. Those are pretty easy things for you to look up, but I'll try and post a few here on the side of the picture. I will say this also about teardown, because it's fairly rectangular, there is a slight taper, so it's a little bit bigger up here at the head of the tent as opposed to the feet, but not by much. But this actually makes it really easy to put away. I've had tents in the past where you have all sorts of weird shapes of vestibules and it's all octagonal, and it's like, how do I fold this thing? Well, this one's really easy. I either fold it in thirds or fourths and then just roll it. Hopefully that some of the review points and features of this tent are still helpful and applicable to the new one. If I could get my hands on one of the newer versions, I'll make a follow-up video to compare. Maybe Sierra Designs, if you see this and want to send me one to test out and review, I'll do that for you. But either way, hopefully it's fairly similar. Hopefully this is helpful. I think all in all, a great takeaway is I've been very pleased with Sierra Design products. And so I trust this one. I love the ingenuity. I love the flexibility of it to use both as a 3-season and a 4-season. So either way, it's not something you're going to take to Everest by any means. There are other ones that are far more durable and bomb shelter, but they're also way heavier. So again, depends on what your need is. For me, it was backpacking and weight and versatility was important. This met the bill, and I have been so pleased with it. So hopefully you found that helpful if you are looking to buying a 4-season tent or looking at this particular tent. Hopefully it gave you some things to keep in mind, some features, and just an overall better understanding of it before you purchase it online, since it's not carried in many stores. If you found this video helpful, please give it a big thumbs up. That's super affirming to me. Also, if you have some feedback, then I'll take that as well. I want to keep learning and getting better at producing quality content for you guys, so feel free to mention that nicely, preferably, in the comments below. Also, if you have questions on something that I did or didn't cover, mention that below. I'm pretty good at about answering questions in the comments. And of course, if you aren't subscribed, please subscribe. I put out 2 types of videos on this channel. I talk about photo and video production, because it's what I do. And I talk about the outdoor space and outdoor gear reviews and outdoor stuff, because it's also what I do. So again, thanks for stopping by. I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you next time.